When police dragged a family's belongings into the street, quote, some of us would kick ash cans and create a general ruckus. This would divert the marshal, and others of us would help the families put the furniture back up. It was a war of attrition. Another account from the same time frame, same town, quote, we formed a squad. Someone would come in and say somebody was put out on the street, and so we would call this one, call that one, and say, how would you like to go help these people? We did that. Boys, girls, elderly men, young men, whoever. You just called somebody and said, hey, let's put the furniture back in. We talk about the Great Depression, not our own Great Recession, but the Great Depression of our grandparents and our great-grandparents' day. We tend to talk about hobos and Hoovervilles, people kicked out of their ordinary lives and roaming the countryside looking for work, lining up at soup kitchens or setting up camp in shacks made out of whatever spare wood or cast-off tin they could find in towns they called Hooverville after President Herbert Hoover, and it was not meant to be a compliment. But Americans who lived through the Great Depression did not necessarily move out of their houses or apartments quietly just because the landlord showed up and said they had to go. Some of them, a lot of them it turns out, stood their ground with help from their neighbors. The Americans of the Great Depression organized what became known as eviction defense, like the people putting the furniture back in I just quoted a moment ago from Brooklyn. Sometimes eviction resistance turned into eviction riots. They rioted in Chicago in August 1931. At least 3 protesters were killed there after 60,000 people marched against evictions. They rioted in the Bronx in 1932 after families went on rent strike over prices they could no longer afford. They rioted in Cleveland after a bank foreclosed on John and Sophie Sperenga, and the county sheriff kicked them out with their 4 children. In Cleveland, the local Small Home and Landowners Federation spread the alarm up and down the neighborhood streets. Thousands of people showed up, thousands of people, to defend the Sperenga family. Quote, as police arrived, they were greeted by taunts, jeers, and volleys of rocks, bricks, sticks, and even kitchen utensils. The officers responded with nightsticks, tear gas, and fire hoses. Reporter James Steele filed this account in The Nation in 1933. Quote, this is a crowd that won't scatter, a crowd that is strangely grim and determined. They were determined to defend that family in 1933, the depth of the Great Depression. Now, Cleveland is defending families again in Cleveland in 2011, not by throwing bricks and sticks and soup ladles, but by doing this. In Cleveland, they are pitching tents in the yards of a single mother with 2 kids and the sheriff on the way. If you're coming for her, you're coming for us. That's been the message from Occupy Cleveland.
They have been wonderful, actually. Keeping me company since last night when they started piling in and helping me get the place cleaned up a little more and organized so I can pack.
You know, a lot of the people you've probably heard on the news have sort of been asking what the Occupy, whatever city you want to put in, they don't really know what they stand for. Has this told you, how has this told you more about what they stand for?
They stand up for the little guy. Definitely. This is Main Street. Wall Street can take care of itself. Main Street needs everybody.
When they came and offered their help, what did you think?
I thought, hey, it sounds like a crazy harebrained scheme. Let's try it. What the heck? I don't have anything more to lose.
Occupy Elizabeth Summerer's backyard in Cleveland seems to have had an effect. She got a 30-day stay on her eviction, enough time to work out a deal with the bank or maybe a plan B, enough time that she and her kids didn't have to see their stuff hauled out into the street. Main Street turned out for her. Just months into the Great Recession, this nation bailed out the banks. An all come free, no rules financial sector had turned people's houses or mortgages into casino chips, which Wall Street made a ton of money trading amongst themselves before the whole thing blew up. Wall Street blew up, which blew up the whole economy. Millions of Americans were left without jobs and with these con artist mortgages that they couldn't pay. The banks, they got bailed out, but the people did not. If you're broke, just ask Elizabeth Summerer. If you're broke, there is very little help. In October alone, there were hundreds of thousands of foreclosures in this country. The banks seizing people's homes and throwing them out into the street. This conflagration in the economy started in 2008, but the foreclosure rate in this country is still rising. Technically, the Great Recession may not even be a recession anymore, but families are still having their possessions dragged to the curb. Good luck, and right this way to the homeless shelter. Is that kind of treatment worth defending against? Is it worth coming to the defense of your neighbors now in 2011, just as people thought it was in 1931 and 1932 and 1933 and on and on? That's becoming the question now among the evolving 99% movement around the country. Ask the family in Atlanta, where the Occupy Atlanta protesters intervened in an eviction last month. Occupy Atlanta got kicked out of its downtown encampment, so they decided that instead they'd move to try to save a police officer's home. Ask the family in Rochester, New York, which almost lost their home to a foreclosure mill. To the foreclosure mill, incidentally, where the employees dressed up as families being kicked out of their homes as their costumes for the company Halloween party last year. That firm was trying to move in on a Rochester family to kick them out of their home before a group of experienced eviction defenders and new occupiers showed up to help them hold their ground. Ask the families in Minneapolis, where occupiers have shown up with a bullhorn and tents and taken direct action.
Occupy has really made that leap and said, it's time for us to mobilize actions off of the plaza and really enter Main Street in really a dramatic way. And so this is the first time that they've said, let's address real problems that real people are dealing with and see if we can help be a part of the solution.
As fall set in, protesters from Occupy Wall Street around the country, particularly around the colder parts of the country, the 99%ers wondered if they could make it through the winter with maybe Quonset huts or cold weather survival gear. Then they wondered where they would go, how they would continue to occupy if police departments kept driving them away from public squares. Did occupying, showing up and staying put in a public space, was that fundamental to the ongoing effectiveness of the movement? And if it is fundamental, then how would they be able to keep occupying, and where? It turns out maybe that the next incarnation of Occupy was already taking hold, with the foreclosure defenses in Atlanta and Cleveland and Minneapolis and Rochester. Justin Elliott reporting at Salon.com this week that a new campaign, Occupy Our Homes, kicks off on Tuesday with protesters in 20 cities. The 99%ers say they will show up at foreclosure auctions and at homes that are at risk of foreclosure. Folks who have not yet been part of resisting an eviction peacefully will get a chance to see how it's done. They will learn from people who've already done it and then teach other people to do it too. They're asking people to sign a pledge that says, quote, I will resist any attempt by the bank to take my home. If they come to foreclose, I will not go. This Occupy Wall Street movement is now truly a movement to occupy everywhere. It is not going away. Necessity is the mother of invention, and the coming of winter and the crackdowns from the police around the country have forced this movement into a new evolution. As Scott Olson, the Marine who had his skull fractured at Occupy Oakland, said on this show last night, the movement is evolving, the movement is adapting, and that's a good thing. If the reports we track every day from the movement itself and local press reports are any indication, this movement is spreading too, geographically spreading in occupations small and fluid and seemingly too adaptable and too numerous for anybody to shut down altogether. As of this upcoming week, there appears to be a concerted effort to move it into the neighborhoods where you can see it, where the crisis really lives still. We spend a lot of time on this show covering politics of the electoral variety. This is politics too. This is the real deal.